our monthly live stream here in the TLB Club, or the Thought Leadership Branding Club. My name is Bobby Umar. I am a motivational speaker by trade. For the last 20 years, I've done 1,000 keynotes and workshops across 4 continents, mostly in the areas of thought leadership, personal branding, networking, storytelling, and things like that. And also now, one of the things I do is I help people land a TEDx talk, because it's the best way to amplify your brand and thought leadership, to do more speaking, do more media appearances, to get more clients, and to build your business. And finally, I run the TLB Club, which is a membership community for small business owners to elevate their brand, their digital voice, their presence, their sales, to have a safe place to share with each other the ups and downs of the entrepreneurship journey, as well as a place to ask for resources, get support, whether they need help with support with sales or marketing or content strategy or negotiations or any sort of thing that comes up. So we have a weekly WhatsApp group, we have a weekly coaching call, we have a monthly live stream, we have a masterclass on Thursday at 4 p.m. with featuring guest expert. We have a private WhatsApp group, private LinkedIn group, where people ask questions, share profiles, share business plans, share all different things, and we give them all feedback. So that's kind of what we are. And if you are listening to this, I would love to actually see your chat. You can chat and you can say, hey, tell us where you're from. Are you from North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, or Australia? Probably Australians are sleeping, but you never know. And we'd love to have you join us today. So let's get right into the conversation. The conversation today is about the coaching factor. Hire performers, hire coaches. Why is that? Well, meet this amazing panel of speakers today. They are all coaches in their own right. They're also all members of the TLB Club community. They all have their own different expertise. And so we'll start with some introductions. So we'll start with Ryan, and then to Linda, and then to Pam. So Ryan, when you introduce yourself, please tell us a bit about who you are, and then pass it on to Linda, who'll then pass it on to Pam.
You bet. Well, it's an honor to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with everyone. My name's Ryan Joswick, and I spent the last 25 years helping revenue leaders grow, predominantly in the F500 and VC-backed startup environment. And about a year ago, went out and built my own business, doing advisory and coaching, and mainly because of the passion that I have around coming alongside people and helping them get from point A to point B in the most efficient manner. And so I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I live in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, married, got 3 daughters, and so live an active lifestyle even outside of the work that I do. So with that, I'll hand it over to Linda.
Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Brubaker, and I'm a career transitions coach. One of the things, I'm outside Chicago, by the way. One of the things that I do is that I build on my business based on over 20 years of experience in human resources, in hiring as an executive recruiter, an HR business partner, and an internal recruiter. And I've been actually doing this kind of coaching now for the last 8 years. One of the reasons I moved from the hiring practice into the coaching realm was that I saw so many things that I could help people with. And it was very frustrating to me when people applied for jobs and they weren't getting their questions answered. And they weren't learning how to do things right. They weren't learning how to build on their skills to transition to their new careers. And so I'm really excited to be able to do this and to answer your questions as we move forward. Pam.
Thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Knox. I am owner and founder of Pam Knox LLC. I like to say I'm in the leadership development space as an executive coach who specializes in effective communication. I help equip leaders at every level of an organization to communicate more effectively, present more confidently, and to have those conversations more courageously. And whether you're a leader in the household, leader at every level of an organization, or even the work that I do with executives or entrepreneurs to help them find their voice as they're just launching their business. I'm on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and I'm happy to be here to help tell the story on how impactful coaching can be.
And speaking of that, great segue, Pam. So let's talk about it. I mean, coaching is something that a lot of people love and get it, and a lot of people don't get it. So I'll start with you, Pam, in terms of, and then I'll let the other two kind of pipe in. What is your take on why is coaching so important? Why do we need it?
I don't want to take a cookie cutter approach, but the idea of what I see in my practice is a lot of folks with my specialty emphasizing 99% of my coaching I do is in the world of communication. And that people will tell me, they'll come at it and they'll go, I read this book, I read this book, I read this book. And somehow there's still this gap that they're in and they feeling stuck because without the coaching part of it, that ride on the side as the guide, so to speak, that they might not be able to put into action the things that they read in the book. They might not feel confident, even though they have the know-how. They might not be able to apply it for them. And they also find coaching can be that person who really gives them the self-awareness to give them a sense of where they're at and to help by thorough, effective questions to get them to see things in a new perspective that they might not have seen with the equipment that they got out of a book initially.
And what about you, Linda? I mean, let's go over to you. Like, I mean, what do you think why is coaching so important?
So actually, that's a great way of looking at the coaching, the idea of being the guide on the side. And that's really what coaching is all about. We're all experts about who we are, but trying to put it into the perspective of someone else who understands, so that they can understand what you do and how you do it and what you can do for them, that's harder. It's harder for us to get sometimes out of our own heads and into the minds of somebody else. And that's what coaching is all about for me. It's helping people not only to recognize what their skills are, but how to talk about them in ways that make sense for other people. My husband and I tease every once in a while that he starts conversations in the middle and expects me to follow where he is. And to some extent, that's what happens with people before coaching. They assume that you know exactly where you're coming from and that they don't have to be as clear as possible putting things in somebody else's perspective. So my view of coaching is that it's the person who helps you to not only recognize what those skills are, but helps you to articulate them in ways that make sense for someone else, not just for you.
Awesome. And let's go to Ryan. Ryan, your take, please.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you, Linda and Pam. Those are great vantage points and perspectives that you shared. I think about the value of coaching is for the most part helping you accomplish something in weeks or months that could otherwise take years. I mean, sure, you could go read a book, you can go fumble around, you can watch a YouTube video, but it could take you years to get the sequence and the cadence, and then you've got the market dynamic changing, and to be able to hire a coach that could come alongside you as an advisor. I use the analogy of riding shotgun in a car, right? You're helping to let someone know what's coming around the corner, things that they should be thinking about. And it can be lonely at the top. A lot of the executives I hire, they're at the top of the organization. They don't have trusted advisors that they can talk to, often within the organization, because they worry what could happen if they openly talk about how they actually feel about certain things. So having someone to be able to confide in and talk through some of these things is extremely valuable. And having a trusted opinion just to bounce ideas off of like, hey, this is the way I'm thinking about it. Or I'm going into this board meeting. Here's what the last quarter's meeting looked like. The investors weren't very happy. How do I position this in a way that can help us get additional funding? And having someone to give a second opinion to is priceless. So I think coaching's been extremely valuable to myself, which we're talking about later in the call. And the clients that I work with find tremendous amount of value based on where they want to go and where they're currently at.
Yeah, I think for me, I find that coaching is, I've had coaching for business, I've had coaching for nutrition and health, and I think that it's just having somebody who's in your corner is a cheerleader, is your champion, somebody you can soundboard off of, someone who will help you stay focused, stay accountable, and really a way to 10x results. Those are all the reasons why I think to me coaching is such a really powerful thing. And I thought it'd be good to kind of segue into our first coaching experience that we had, if we ever had our first coach, because I can tell you who my first coach was. His name was Nick Kuzmich. And I remember my business, I was, everything was okay, but it wasn't going as well as I thought it would be. And one of the things that he was really good at was just somebody who was there for me to just give me advice on the things that I was struggling with to try to build my programs and build my practice and what I was trying to do. And I remember too, like it took me a while to invest. In fact, the first 3 coaches I ever had, it took me a really long time before I invested in them. I knew Nick for 2 years. Then my next coach was Scott. I knew him for 2 years before I said yes. Then another one, Carlos, knew him for 2 years before I said yes. But I think that the thing I liked the best the first time was I trusted his expertise. And even though I was paying something that I was at the, I guess, the cusp of my discomfort, I definitely took advantage of that and asked him tons of questions. And he helped me tremendously in the first part of getting my business to be more focused, because I was definitely not focused. I was focused on things that were not directly or indirectly helping my business. So that's kind of my original story. Linda, how about you? What was your first kind of coaching experience, whether it was as a coach or you getting a coach?
So my first coaching experience as a coach came about rather unexpectedly. It wasn't something I was looking to do, but people kept asking me for the advice, and it seemed like it was really working. So that was one of the things that I felt was very useful to me. It helped me see where I needed to go. In terms of being being coached by someone else, I admit I was a little hesitant. I'm one of those people who initially thought, oh, I know how to do all of this, which is one of the things that I find from my clients. But I quickly realized that I may be the expert on me, but I'm not the expert on everything. And so one of the things that I found from going into coaching as well as being coached was that it was important to recognize that I'm not the smartest person in the room. And that's really important, to learn from those people who are smarter than I am, to surround myself with those people who are smarter than I am, and give me the advice, the support, and the feedback in order to do it. So that's, to me, what coaching is all about. Initially, I was a little hesitant, but now I'm all on, both as a coach and as somebody being coached.
Now, what about you, Ryan? I mean, tell me a bit about your kind of first experience in this area.
Yeah, it was 20 years ago. I went from managing a local sales team over part of a state in the United States to leading a region which had 6 states and 2 provinces in Canada. Went from maybe 5 direct reports to 19, and I was totally overwhelmed. Didn't have the support I needed. Didn't really know what I was doing. Learning how to travel and be on the road 3 weeks a month, and then manage just the stress of the job. And it was one of those like sink or swim situations, because it was about, you got to get the results or you're out of the job. And so at that point, it was very non-traditional to hire a coach. And I hired a coach. I was like, okay, I'm going to pay someone money to help give me direction in where I should focus my time. Because that's really what it came down to, is we all have 24 hours in a day. And what came down to it is I was spinning my wheels doing all this busy work, but it wasn't moving the needle forward with some of the KPIs. So I hired a coach to help me prioritize, strategize, how to work some of the relationships and some of the strategy within the company, and took the dead last region to #1 in the company a year later. So I just became convicted of like, you get the right coach and they can get results in a very, very short period of time. I mean, you look at some of the best athletes in the world that are Olympics, they have multiple coaches. They're already really, really good, and they have a coach that takes them to the next level. And I did it again a decade, or maybe 7 years later after that experience. I went and committed to do a triathlon, an Ironman. And I thought, oh, I'll watch videos, I'll read a book. And I started doing that, and I realized I don't know how to swim in open water. I'm going to drown. And I did a little sprint, and I almost drowned. And at that point, I hired a different coach that specialized in endurance activities and helped teach me how to swim and how to use a bike and how to use just the basics of triathlons. And a year later, went and completed a triathlon. So those were 2 of my first experiences, using one an athletic coach and one using a business coach.
Awesome. And I think that it begs the question whether, if you're someone who hired a coach, does that also make you a better coach, which I think is a question we'll get into later. But I'd love to hear Pam's kind of first initial thoughts of getting into this.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as I look back as the times that I've taken advantage of coaching, my very first coach was for business development, and I was not new in business. My business had been about 6 years, maybe 10 years in at that time. But as you grow in business, there's different challenges that come as it ebbs and flows, not only for the economy that can impact your business, that might require you to have a different perspective on how you apply. And again, knowing at what point in your journey of business do you want to have that guide on the side? What I like about coaching also is as I look back to that coaching relationship that I had, this aspect of, I approach this from a, hey, I need some business development. I need some challenges to work through within my business. But so often as entrepreneurs, when that work and life is so intertwined, that I was taken back at how much of the work that we did in those sessions sometimes shifted over to the personal side. And I find today in my practice that some of the folks that I work with, they will get a little nervous or start apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry. I know we're here for effective communication or executive leadership communication. And I don't mean to be talking about personal things. And as I remind them, the world is so intertwined in communication, where how you show up as a communicator is impacted by so much in life. And so it fits to bring that in. And as entrepreneurs, back when I was taking advantage of coaching my first time, was this idea of, it made me a more effective business owner because I could utilize my coach to navigate some of the challenges of, at that time, being a mom with young children, running a business, and so forth. And then now I look at the coaching that I'm taking advantage of now, that I've hired coaches for, is again back to that more of that life things as you transition into different stages of your life. And again, still being that business owner. But this time my entree point into the coaching is to do the work, right? Do the work on some of that personal stuff. And that's the thing about getting there faster. I understand this idea of taking advantage of coaching and really just getting there more quickly. I had somebody, the coaching call right before this, that literally she was a half-hour session and she went like the mind-blowing thing. She goes 15 minutes in. So there are some things that can really get you over a hurdle very quickly. But I also like the saying of, if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go with someone else, right? Or multiple people. And I think that that's the thing with journey is of coaching. It is a journey. It's not the quick fix. That's consulting sometimes, when I can just tell you how to do it and send you on your way. But to get that self-awareness and be fully equipped to show up as your most positive self, most confident self, and do the work and explore together, that to me is the real value in coaching, and do it in a safe space with someone that's not only a safe space, but you set aside the space. Because so much of it is when we don't take the time to do this type of work and reflection that's required sometimes.
You said two things I kind of want to address. One is this idea of going further and faster together with somebody else, and that's also the reason why I'm a big believer in coaching plus community. Community is also a way I always talk about TLB Club. This is brought to you by the TLB Club, membership community with entrepreneurs and leadership development aficionados that are trying to level up, get support, get resources. And I always say that, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're all working together to better ourselves. And that's why I love coaching and I love community. So I think that was really awesome what you said. And the second thing, I forget what I was going to say, but what I did want to do is I kind of want to do, I know what it was. It was the coaching versus consulting piece, which is kind of interesting because I call it coachelting, because typically when I work with some people, coaching has a lot more of a mindset piece that people need help with, and consulting is me just telling them what to do. And so sometimes, some people want more coachelting than they want coaching, or they want more consulting than coaching. And so I kind of, differ for each one. But I want to ask you guys a random question, and I'll let you guys politely decide who will speak first, because I think it's good practice. You having done coaching yourself, how does it affect how you coach others?
So I really look for a coach that understands me and is willing to work with me, give me feedback and support. Somebody who really listens, not somebody who has a set program and every one size fits all, because it doesn't. I'm not like everyone else. And so the idea for me in terms of a coach that I want to work with, as well as the kind of coaching that I do, my coaching is not one size fits all. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for other people. My feeling is that everybody is individuals. And what I'm looking for is those light bulb moments. For me, a coach is somebody who does it with me, not somebody who does it for me. who gives me ideas, feedback, guidelines, suggestions, resources, who points me in different directions that I might not have thought of before, who might teach me, but doesn't do it for me. Again, that's the difference between the coaching versus the consulting. So when my view is, I really want to be more of that coach rather than the consultant. I've been there, done that. The consulting to me is that individual piece of work. The coaching is that ongoing relationship. What works for you now? What do you need? How can I support you and help you grow along the way? And one of the things, by the way, I do tell my clients or potential clients, my style is relatively direct. If something works, I'm going to tell you. If it doesn't work, I'm going to tell you that too. And if that's not the style you like, then I'll point you in another direction.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I've thought, Bobby, is you ask about how did us using a coach help us in coaching others.
Yeah.
It's given me a level of empathy, right? A level of understanding of what does it mean to work with a coach? Where I've paid good money to receive direction, I think, okay, I'm helping to coach other people. I have to show up with my A game, and I have to be able to deliver results, right? Because otherwise it gets real uncomfortable real quick when someone's paying you, you're not helping them get from point A to point B. And since I've personally been through that experience, it gives me a perspective to make sure that I over deliver on the calls and the advising and coaching that I do with them.
I think for me, the thing that I learned the most about being coached is I've invested in coaching, and one of the things with coaching is I don't want to be sold to, nor do I want to sell to somebody. I want to invest in someone. I want them to invest in me, and that's one thing I learned. But the second thing is the two coaches that I invested in, it didn't work out. But then the third one, what worked really well was he was always accessible to me 24/7. My first coach too was available 24/7 whenever I had a random question. And when I first started coaching, I wasn't doing that model. And now, that's what I do. When I coach my TEDx clients, I am available 24/7 to answer the questions, whatever they need. And similarly, when I do the group coaching in TLB Club, I make myself accessible. And so for me, that's taught me to just be accessible to the people who are in your coaching client and your community. So that's something I've learned. And I always do that now. Pam, anything you want to add before we go to the next question?
Yeah, I think these are all great points. And I would just add, as if someone's watching and they're looking for a coach, there's this aspect of, again, just Bobby, you just shared some value points for yourself of this accessibility, check the box. This was something that you expected out of coaching. And one of the things I ask all the folks that I work with is, how will you know that this is a great working relationship between you and I? How can I best support you and add value in these sessions? And if you're not asked that, you can always bring that into the session to just try to articulate what it is that you're looking to get out of these sessions. And sometimes it's just like any other new introduction to a relationship. It develops, and being free in this safe space of coaching to express what's working and what's not working for you, to see if shifts could be made, or as Linda alluded to, then the coaches can direct you to somebody else in the coach community.
Now, we had a question actually in the chat, so let's get to that. And look, if you're here and you're asking questions, you can chat in the chat box. You can put in the comments your questions. Let us know where you're from. I love all the people that are sharing stuff. But actually, there was a question, so I think I'm going to throw it out there for you guys. By Sandra Ragoza. What would you do as a coach when the conversation with your client dries up and there's little left to talk about? This is where the coach has exhausted their script, speaking from experience from the client side. Open-ended.
I'll go. I mean,
Sure.
You end the relationship. I mean, that's my thought is, as a coach, if I can't deliver value to someone, and they have something else that they want to go to, I help introduce them to someone that can take them there. I'm doing them a disservice if I can't help them and they don't bring topics to the table. Now, they may have blind spots, and you, through questions and helping to educate them on areas that they're not aware that they need to work on. But if they're not open to that, I help introduce them to someone else.
So hi, Sandra. Nice to see you today. Twice in one day. That's unusual. Anyway, what I would say is that what you want to do is you want to keep the coaching relationship open, at least leave the door open. If it's no longer productive for you or for them, then what you do is that you want to say, what else can we help you with? How can I continue to support you? And it may be that you say, we've finished this together. We've done your initial work. Let's continue to check in and see how things are going. And to me, that's the way of doing it. It's one of the reasons that I do some of the calls that I do, where it's that ongoing support, but it has to be based on what they need at the time. So if they're done for the moment, that's great. How else can I support you? Keep in touch. Let me know how it's going and how I can help. But the emails, by the way, and the phone calls or the texts, they can continue regardless.
Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I'd like to just go back on this idea of it being a journey, right? So that if you identify a destination and you reach that destination, well, congratulations, right? And that's you feel complete, and it is complete. There's a lot though to the journey together where things come up organically, right? Based on exploration and through thoughtful questioning that cause you to explore some things that you didn't even know coming into. For instance, in the area of communication, it could be, hey, I need to have these difficult conversations. And that might have been a premise that you came into. And all of a sudden that you're realizing that, hey, I don't really have an executive presence that I show up as a communicator effectively, or that I don't give feedback very well. So there's things that come up organically that will keep it going as long as, again, you get to drive these, is what I always say, so that you get the most value out of it, focusing it and coming to the table and say, hey, at the end of this half hour, an hour session, kind of have a framework or a vision of where you want to be at the end of that session. And that can also help that guide show up more effectively for you and to meet your needs. But it's
and what's great about this is this question actually came up in our TLB Club weekly Monday group coaching call. And we talked about this, about, what happens when things dry up, or does it ever end? And I said, look, like one of my coaching thing is coaching people on the TEDx journey. But when they land the TEDx talk, it's not necessarily over. Some people, so one of my clients land the TEDx talk very quickly, but now what? I said, well, let's put together and let's craft a world-class TEDx talk, and let's leverage that TEDx talk for your brand. And so sometimes but to Ryan's point, sometimes the journey ends, and maybe they want to do something else that you don't really want to help them with, or it's not something within your wheelhouse. But to Pam's point, sometimes, like the people who land a TEDx talk, they're like, hey, Bobby, I want to do more paid speaking. Can you help with that? Absolutely. Then let's continue the conversation and keep going. So you never know what's gonna come from that. So I think that's a really good piece of advice to everybody. So again, this is brought to you by the TLB Club. Make sure you check out the link in the QR code and see what it's all about. You can get access to really amazing people in the community who can answer some questions that you're working on. Let's go to the next question, which is, and let's go to Pam first. What is the hardest part of coaching somebody else?
Yeah, what comes up for me as I hear that is this dynamic of the readiness of the client for coaching. Oftentimes, that individual may have been signed up for coaching based on some feedback on a performance appraisal, perhaps, and they maybe aren't in alignment of it. So there might be a little resistance to that. There might be readiness of making the time for it and committing to it based on their busy schedules to work within the readiness of it so that we can keep that going. The other side of it that comes up for me is this idea of a challenging is this, in the dance of coaching, it's this pressure. Sometimes as a coach, the pressure's heavily on me if the person needs a lot of guidance into where they want to go, right? That they don't have that clarity initially. So there's some more pressure there versus somebody taking on all the pressure themselves, so to speak, and not even allowing that coach to come into the conversation and doing the talk track without really wanting to stop and do any work or explore things further. So part of it is that dance that comes up for me is the challenge as well.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think about one time I was at a networking event, and met a very successful individual who's bought and sold multiple companies and done a lot. And I said, hey, what's the best advice you've ever, or what's the best advice you could ever give? And he looked at me in the eye and he says, thought for a moment, and he says, meet them where they're at, but don't leave them there. And so when I think about coaching, one of the hardest parts is understanding context. What's the right question to ask to understand their beliefs, their the challenges or perceived challenges that they have, the dynamic within their company, their environment, because all those create this lens that your client is seeing the world through. And me understanding that, putting myself in their shoes, and then having enough information so I know the right questions to ask to help them come up with the solutions, because I don't want to just give them the solution, right? They talk about give someone a fish, or teach them to fish, don't just give them a fish. Difference between consulting versus coaching, leading with the right questions to help someone have an epiphany, an aha moment to say, oh my gosh, here's what I should do. So that's one of the harder parts, because we deal with different types of personalities and egos and different political components within companies, and understanding those all are variables and one size does not fit all.
Okay. Who's next? Linda?
Thank you. So
Wait, you're muted. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear Linda?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, so
Okay, but I can't hear her. But you guys go ahead.
oh, sorry. They're all great points. I think there are several challenges in terms of the coaching process, one of which is when somebody signs up and says, I know exactly what I need, and you know that that's not right, that they need maybe something a little different. So that whole idea of listening, asking the right questions, helping them to refocus sometimes is really important. And sometimes that's a forward and back, recognizing that coaching isn't a straight line. Sometimes there are steps to the side. Sometimes you go back over something, but getting the feedback as well as the questions answered and asking your own questions, I think really helps. One of the other challenges that I find in coaching is people who say, I'm going to sign up for it, but I really don't have the time, or I know it all, so let's go to something else. And getting them to get that light bulb moment that there may be that other perspective, and that's why they hired you in the first place. Sometimes that's one of the things that really takes the time. But to some extent, that's helping them get over their imposter syndrome, helping them recognize what they do well, but helping them to put it into somebody else's perspective. And it's always hard for us to get out of our own heads, okay? Regardless of what kind of coaching you're doing. Thinking about it from someone else's perspective, and as Ryan said, learn the right questions to ask so that you can help them determine where they need to be and how they need to get there. Putting all the pieces of everything, it's not just the job or the work or whatever. All aspects of life come into play for you as well as the organization. So trying to put all of those pieces together and helping people to recognize not only what they do well, but where they could use help and how they can put it all together. To me, that's part of the challenge. And for the coach, the challenge is what's in it for them. How do we make it work for them, not just for us?
I like that you brought up this idea of putting the pieces together, because sometimes it's not even just putting them together, but sharing back the pieces you just heard. And sometimes even in just collectively connecting the dots for them, so to speak, which I guess is a way of putting a puzzle together. But even with connecting the dots, you might not have that full image, but all of a sudden, that's sometimes when the aha takes place, that you just help them navigate through something and they didn't even realize it, but it was by virtue of you feeding it back to them or just calling out. Sometimes it's not even connecting the dots. Sometimes the power of coaching is being able to call out, hey, you were over here saying this and it felt like this, and now you're saying this. I feel like they're not on the same context there. What shifted, right? Or calling out some disparities that they might not see gets them thinking.
One of the coaches that I value, that I use myself, tells me sometimes that one of her roles is to call out or to tell you that you have spinach in your teeth. In the sense that She's going to be the one who will be open enough to tell you if you're doing it wrong and to give you another way of doing it, to give you those teachable moments to help you put it all together. To me, I think that's really important as part of this journey, is for me as a coach, giving the feedback and to some extent letting people see the feedback, see themselves and how they're reacting, and then talking about it together, and then giving them an opportunity to practice again as an example, or to work with them to do it so that they see what works and what doesn't from their own perspective. I think it's a really useful tool, but that's something that not everybody is comfortable with as a client, at least in the beginning. They want to be told what to do if they're ready for that, not necessarily how to do it and necessarily see it as part of the process.
I think one of the beautiful things with coaching is you help bring things into awareness, right? Like you take something that may not be in someone's awareness and you bring it into the awareness, and then they have to choose whether they want to deal with it or not. And sometimes they don't want to deal with it, and you got egos and everything else. Yeah. And to do that, obviously you got to have active listening skills like Pam, you talked about, really listening to what they're saying, and then understanding what are they saying between the lines, and then where do they want to go, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Bobby's having some tech issues, so his audio is out. So I guess we can jump into the next question. And the next one is, what are some of the things you do to select the best coach, right? So when you're thinking about hiring a good coach, what do you look for, or what recommendations would you give for someone to look for? And why don't we start with Pam?
Yeah, what comes up for me is this idea of, we approached it a little bit earlier, it's just the idea of setting up for yourself what it is that you're looking for. And sometimes people come at that from a past experience, and they'll say, I had this other coach and they did this, that, and the other thing. That's not for me. So that is an approach. But also proactively saying to yourself, what is it that you're looking to achieve? Sometimes it's communication styles. Linda alluded to the fact that she had a very direct communication style. And again, in my coaching, questioning folks up front, how can I best support you and add value, is encourage them to come forward to say, hey, you want homework? You don't want homework, right? It's okay that I can be direct and give you that feedback. And some people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's why I'm here, because people at work, they don't really tell me the truth. And I want to get it here first. So that there's also this accessibility and availability that Bobby approached to. So I would encourage you to come up with this kind of checklist for yourself. And then also in that first call, whether it's an official discovery call before you hire them, or in that first call that you're now their client, I would, again, be my authentic self and see what the pacing is sometimes, how they calendar things, what their availability on the calendar looks like. There's a multitude of factors, but I would just, again, empower you as the one who's driving the conversation and driving the relationship to show up and explore these things and not be afraid to ask for them and be curious about them.
And I agree. So I wouldn't hire somebody just on the basis of I've seen their website. I want to know a little bit more about them. I want to be able to talk with them initially. The same way that I wouldn't bring on a client simply because they said, okay, here's what it is. I want to know what their goals are. I want to know what's working for them, what's not. I want to know a little bit more about their style, and I want them to see mine. I want to have that interaction. I want to see something about what kinds of value. For example, if I'm hiring a coach, one of the things that I do is I check them out on LinkedIn, not just the website, but I want to see how they react to other people, what their posts are like, how they interact with other people, what their comments are like. I want to see that value first in terms of their interactions. And I want my clients or potential clients to see the same thing. So if you're hiring a coach, one of the things that I recommend is that you make sure that you are sharing what works for you and what doesn't. Ask them how their style is, or see how their style works, so that there's that kind of a mesh. And as the coach talking to the client to begin with, and I do use those 20-minute calls, could be a discovery call, it could be just a get to know you call, whatever it is. I want to find out what works for them, what their goals are, how they'd like to be supported, where they think they need that assistance, and we'll talk about, based on what they're doing and what they're not doing, I may come up with some recommendations that may be different from what they thought initially. And in many cases, they should, that's right, I hadn't even thought about that, but. So my feeling is that a good coach, if you're hiring a coach, should not only be able to ask you the right questions to make sure that they know what you need, what you think you need, but should be able to say, in addition to that, you might also consider. Based on what you just told me, here are some suggestions that I have for you. And in those initial discovery calls, give them some freebies so that they understand, okay, how you work, why you work, and the value of what you do.
Yeah, that's good. I think about some of the best coaches I've worked with, interviewed, and now put in my own practice is I look at, have they done what I want to do? Right. And part of it is getting really, really clear on what is it that you want or what I wanted. Like, what is the objective I want to accomplish? And then who knows how to do that better than anyone else? And I think about the analogy, like if I live up in Washington State in the United States of America, and if I want to go from Washington to, let's say, Orlando, Florida, there's a lot of different ways I could get to Orlando. And depending on who I talk to, they're going to tell me how to get to Orlando. So for instance, if I decide to go to the Greyhound bus station and I say I want to go to Orlando, they're going to tell me the best bus route to get from Washington to Orlando. And if I go to Amtrak, they're going to tell me the best train route to get to Orlando. And if I go to the airport, they're going to tell me the best flight routes. And if I go to REI, they might tell me the best bike route that I can go in the scenic route. Now, all of them are going to be very confident in what they tell me. They're going to tell me the exact route I should take, where I should stop. And if I'm not very conscious around who I'm asking for the advice, they very well may take me to the wrong solution, which is not anything against Greyhound, but it would take a good chunk of the week to go from Washington to Orlando, Florida on a Greyhound versus it could take a few hours on a plane. So when you're looking at a coach, you want to say clearly, where do I want to go? And then does that individual have the experience and the expertise and the know-how to be able to get me from point A to point B in an efficient manner? And then personality-wise, do I fit with them? Like, can I trust them? Do I feel like they're going to have my back and they're going to help support me? And those are all things that as you work with more coaches and you have more conversations with coaches, you got to trust your gut and then and go for it and understand that a coach may get you from one point to the next point. And then there might be a point where you've got to get a different coach to help you go somewhere else.
I get the sense of this dance, right? Again, of building that relationship. You mentioned trust, and trust is a paramount baseline foundational factor to have effective coaching. But you're not going to have that trust right at the first call and the first session. So, I always encourage them, give it some time, but again, voice and express yourself in subsequent sessions. But I want to get back to the idea of their area of expertise. And certainly so that a multitude of coaches will have specialties, right? So that they'll niche down, as they say, into one aspect of coaching. Mine's effective communication. Now, having said that, I have never held an engineering job in my life, but I coach a lot of engineers and a lot of data people, or people that have specialties in data. And so it's the idea of not limiting yourself with a viewpoint that might limit your view on where you go for your coaching. Because again, part of it is where you're getting to, but also it's in the value of the questions. And I think Linda raised that. It's the value of the questions to take you there, so that I might argue, I might not tell them whether they need the Amtrak or the bus, but I will get them to explore, again, what their goals are and how they might feel, how being on a bus might serve them better than being on the train, and let them come to that realization of what vehicle they're going to use to take there.
Great points. And the idea of somebody who's been there, who's done it. So when I was recruiting, for example, I hired everything from chemists to manufacturing managers, purchasing managers, IT people, salespeople, the whole gamut, all of it. Have I done all of those jobs? Absolutely not. But by asking the right questions, I know how to answer or how to help guide people to the careers that they want, to be the right hire for the company that they want to be at. So whether I was doing it from the inside or the outside, and whether I'm doing it as a coach, knowing how things work, knowing the questions to ask, knowing how to help people formulate not only where they want to go, but giving them ideas about how to get there because you've already done that work, both for yourself and for other people. So important. The people that you want to hire are definitely the people who've been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt. They know what things are working for, how they work, and so on. You want somebody who has the experience, the expertise, not just somebody who's hung out a shingle and said, just I'm a coach. You want to be able to see that expertise and go from there. And that style is really important. That give and take is really important. Asking the right questions is really important. And as I think it was Christy who mentioned in the chat, the discovery call helps to establish that personal relationship, those goals, those needs from both perspectives, as well as to talk about the credibility of the coach as well and see whether or not that meets your needs.
Again, as Bobby continues to have his technical difficulties, we do see a question in the chat on at what time can you go from being an advisor on a specific subject to being a coach on the subject? Is it advisable to coach for free until you build your reputation as a coach? Ryan, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I mean, I look at coaching as helping to enable, helping to lead with questions, and helping to someone come up with a solution. And advising is a little bit more forward, almost like consulting, and maybe making more suggestions, more of a direct route versus a windy route. And I think both of them are valuable based on what and who you're working with. I originally tried to take more of a coaching approach, and if they're just like, I need the answer, I'm stuck, I might say, well, would you like me to give a suggestion or some resources or a little bit more of a direct answer with those? And then the second part of the question, I think you asked around the coaching. Well, I guess we'll do the first one, then do the second one. That's what I would say regarding the advising. You have any thoughts, Linda?
Linda, do you have anything
So I
to
think,
add?
Brian, you answered it very well. The idea is that you want to be able to build that expertise and that trust before you get started. And I would go from there. Sometimes you have to give some things away as part of your give back, you're paying it forward, as well as establishing that credibility before you actually hand out your shingle. Pam.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in because I feel as if Bobby was on the call with great audio right now, he'd be chiming in and talk about the value of establishing yourself as a thought leader in the space, whether you're harnessing the expertise you had as somebody who came through the ranks in a particular industry or role and putting out thought leadership pieces, whether they're writing about it or speaking about it, doing your videos, being active here on LinkedIn Live. That's going to help elevate and have you take notice of your expertise, and in a coach way, not so much in the industry way. Again, reframing it from this other perspective also as the coach, how you can add value to folks that are in those roles now, looking through that lens. And the other aspect of if I want to just switch gears, Ryan, to the second part of it is the idea of doing it for free versus when you've been doing it a long term. The aspect of the value, right? The value of the expertise is there. So put a price tag on it.
But I love the idea of being able to demonstrate your expertise online, both in programs like this, as well as not just your posts themselves, but also the comments you make, the relevant comments you make on other people's posts, supporting them and giving that kind of coaching advice, that expertise advice that you have to demonstrate not only your value, your background, but the skills that you have, as well as the kind of experience and the kinds of advice that you can provide to other people. So the comments are, in my view, just as important, sometimes even more important than the actual posts themselves.
So when I think about the question around the free coaching part of it, and I do pro bono work with some nonprofit leaders and things like that. What I have learned is that, to your point, Pam, is it's about the value. Does someone perceive the value? And the other one is, I find if someone has skin in the game, they're more committed. When they don't have skin in the game, sometimes they're late, they don't follow through on things. Like, it has to be a commitment on both people's times. And the amount may be smaller than you normally charge, but there should be some level of commitment that they have. Even if the money is going to be donated to a nonprofit or something, you can get creative. But when people are paying for something, they're more willing, I find, to show up prepared and like willing to make a change in their life, has been my experience. Now, there's value in getting the repetitions in, understanding how to ask questions, how to deal with different personalities, different industries. And there's a lot of things you can do to give back in a very meaningful way to society and get those repetitions in. And I think still keep the value up. And one of them may be through what Linda talked about, adding comments to posts and thought leadership and resources and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay.
Our next question, I can throw
That's
that
what
one.
I'm looking for.
Right, Ryan, do you have the
I
original
do.
questions that you can throw
So
out?
the last one is as a coach, what are some of the challenges in coaching someone? Oh, wait a minute, we did that one. No. Yeah, so how exactly does coaching lead to higher performance?
Right. So to me, one of go ahead, Pam.
I believe that coaching leads to higher performance because primarily coaching translates into transformation so that you're showing up differently, and you're walking away from an effective coaching session is going to help you to walk away with actionable steps to put into practice, so that there is this demonstration of the transformation you got, whatever that journey was, that destination we talked about, that you got there. And so that it's higher performance. There's also this, because I know this is the subject matter of our talk today, is this, high performers, higher coaches. There's also this aspect of, you may be sitting here thinking that that's not for me. I'm not a high performer. I'm not a high performer, Pam. There's this thing about being high potential, right? You're sitting here listening to this or viewing this and find that you've got a tremendous amount of potential packed inside you and you haven't unpacked that. Hire a coach to help you unpack that. Hire a coach to help give you the confidence, equip you with some tools to see yourself in a different reframed perspective, help you articulate the value so that you start from this high potential. I know I could do more. Some people might even be, as we say, shoulding on themselves. I should be doing more. So in the high potential can get you to that high performer. The trick is to have clarity on what high performance looks like, what it looks like for you. That's equivalent to, define for yourself what success looks like. How will I know that this has been a success? Part of that is that destination. Because if you don't identify the destination up front, you may get there and not know, or all roads will lead there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think one of the things that helps when we're talking about how does coaching help lead to high performance, I'm going back to the idea of hiring the experts. You're experts at you and what you do, but hiring a coach can help you not only articulate it better, demonstrate it better, help you recognize the value that you bring for other people and how to actualize that in a way that makes sense. One of the things that I think helps in terms of helping you to be a better performer and why you should hire a coach is that to some extent, many of us either have that imposter syndrome, oh, I really don't think I can do this isn't my thing, or, I know it all. And being a good person who gets, being that performer who wants the coaching, who benefits from the coaching, recognizes that there are always things that you can learn to grow, because your ultimate goal, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's a business owner, whether we're looking for a new job, whether you're trying to grow within your company, your organization, or grow your organization, is that we can't do it all. And sometimes it takes a good coach to help you point yourself in the right directions, to give you the feedback, to help you ask the right questions, to help you learn and grow and articulate, and not only give you that feedback, but that encouragement and support to say, basically, yes, you can, and here's how. And one of the things that I think that really helps people grow from coaching, and why people should hire a coach, is to recognize that each step along the way, you're getting that added value, that coaching, that advice for things that you might not have thought of before. It's a way of helping you to reframe, refocus, to grow, and continually to be able to put those things together. Sandra just said it's like that roadmap, okay, to get from here to there. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a constant user of Waze, okay, when I'm in the car. Not only because even if I know where I'm going, it might give me a shorter route or route me around different things. And that's what a high performer does, or somebody who wants to be a high performer. They know that there's always perhaps a different way, different advice that they can get. They know where they want to go. Sometimes they may want some additional advice to say, oh, you can go beyond that. But if you know where you want to go, hiring a coach can help you to get there, and get there faster, better, and continue to grow along the way.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Yay, welcome back, Robbie.
So what I missed. Did you guys?
We were just about ready to. We were talking about the idea of hiring a coach, and Linda was talking about imposter syndrome. And what I was thinking is a great segue to talk about being in community with others in the Thought Leadership Branding Club. So why don't you take it from there?
Well, actually, I'd love to hear your take. So maybe, Pam, why don't you talk about the importance of community combined with coaching? Because we only have like 3 minutes left.
I think it ties very nicely, so that in the sense of being in community, if you're sitting here thinking about, I have that imposter syndrome, I don't know how, right? Being in community with others who have been there, done that, like in the TLB club, you can get answers to that. You can get through what's having you stuck, right? Get over that gap to move forward with it, and do it in a safe community, giving community, and core group of folks that are very aligned in their thinking, and aligned, maybe not all perspectives, but aligned in their thinking of what the value is that they're bringing to the club and what they're getting out of it. So that I think also within coaching frameworks, there are you can do it in a group, right? Somewhat of that peer coaching, the mastermind coaching that you can do in the company of others, because then it's not only your question that's answered by the expert in the room who you may deem the coach, but there's also the expertise that's shared in community with others.
Ryan, what's your take on community and coaching together?
Yeah, I mean, it can be lonely when you're out on your own. So having a community to be able to talk with and build relationships with and joke around with. I think one of the other values is you have a lot of forward-thinking individuals that can answer questions around technology, such as Restream that we're using right now to stream to multiple technology platforms around the world. And tactical questions that, yes, you could go find the answer, but it may take you 15, 20 minutes to go do it, versus being able to bounce it off a group of people that have tried something and it worked, or tried something and it didn't work. There's value in that community.
Awesome. And Linda, any last thoughts on that?
One of the things that I value about the TLB Club and the group sessions that we have is that it's not just my questions. I learn from the questions of other people too. And that's one of the big things, is that we're all in different places, but we're all there to support one another and to learn and grow. And while we may have a topic, sometimes we'll stray from that topic in order to go off in different directions, because that's what happens to come up. And that's what good coaching is all about. Whether it's a group coaching session, an individual coaching session, And with the TLB Club, one of the things that I really value is the different perspectives that people bring, the different questions that they bring, the different places that they are, and the fact that everybody is there to support one another, to bring their advice, their expertise, as well as their questions to the whole room. I highly recommend it. Come join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the conversation, guys. Thank you so much for taking care of me while my tech. And that's part of a community, right? So my tech audio went out for the last like 20 minutes, and I messaged these guys and they just took over and stepped up, and that's what I love. That's the power of community and the power of working with coaches. So make sure you follow Ryan, Pam, and Linda. If you have further questions outside of this live stream, put them in the chat, tag us. We'll do our best to answer them as quickly and possibly as we can. And I want to thank everybody for joining the call today. Feel free to check the QR code, learn more about TLB Club, and see what all the different things you'll get out of it. As well as if you wanted to get a teaser, come by to one of our weekly Thursday masterclass with a guest expert speaker, and we can share. You'll get to see what that's all about, get to meet some of the people, and be a guest as well. So with that, thanks so much for being part of the conversation. I mean, my final thoughts, and again, I missed what you guys were saying. I'm sure it's gold, and I can't wait to watch it afterwards. But my general take of coaching is that every coach needs a coach, and we all need support, focus, accountability. We need a sounding board. We need someone to champion us. We need someone to cheerlead us. And going further and farther and faster and higher alone is one of the hardest things in the world. Whether you're trying to lose weight, grow your business, have a content strategy, get a TEDx talk. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. And so that's why all the best coaches have coaches. That's why all the highest performers have coaches, because there is something really special at that, and make sure you take advantage of it. So with that, thanks everybody. Check out these amazing speakers. Check out TLB Club, and we'll see you next month for our next monthly live stream. Thanks so much, and so long.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And